All right, so if you're heading into the world of pharmacy in Sri Lanka, this explainer is absolutely for you. We're going to dive deep into the country's tightly controlled system for dangerous drugs. And trust me, this isn't just about learning rules. It's about understanding public safety and your massive professional responsibility.
So let me ask you this. Picture a really potent medicine, something like morphine. How in the world does it get all the way from a factory somewhere on the other side of the planet to a patient who needs it in a small town in Sri Lanka without ever getting lost or ending up where it shouldn't? Well, we're going to follow that exact journey step by step.
Okay, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why this super strict system is even a thing. Then, we'll meet the one and only gatekeeper for all imports. After that, we'll find out where these drugs are kept in a central hub. And finally, we'll land right at the pharmacy counter to break down your incredibly important role in this whole chain.
Right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the rules, you've got to understand the why behind it all. This entire system is built from the ground up with public health and safety as its absolute mission. You know, it really boils down to three big goals. First, making sure these powerful drugs are only used for actual legitimate medical reasons. Second, building a fortress to stop any chance of them being sold illegally. And third, making sure the government has eyes on every single step of the process. It's all about control for the sake of keeping everyone safe.
So where does all this control even begin? Well, it starts right at the country's border, with one, and only one, incredibly powerful gatekeeper.
And listen, this is probably the single most important fact to remember. In Sri Lanka, there's only one entity that can legally bring in, hold, or distribute dangerous drugs, and that's the Director General of Health Services, or the DGHS. No private company, no hospital, not a single individual can import these things. It all flows through this one central point.
You know, the whole structure is actually pretty straightforward. Just think of the DGHS as the country's only wholesaler for these drugs. And then everyone else, hospitals, your pharmacy, doctors, you're the authorized retailers. This idea of getting stock from just one official source, that is the absolute key to the entire system's integrity.
Okay, so the DGHS brings the drugs into the country. Now what? Where do they go? They don't just get shipped out to thousands of different pharmacies. Nope. Everything gets funneled to one central spot. And that brings us to this very specific, very important title, the Chief Opium Officer. Now, this isn't some ancient role. It's the title held by the Director of the State Medical Stores. This is the person who, working for the DGHS, actually manages the entire national stockpile and is in charge of sending out these controlled drugs to the retailers, you know, the hospitals and pharmacies.
So let's walk through that journey again, step by step. The DGHS is the only one who can import it. The Chief Opium Officer stores it all centrally. From there, it's sent out to you, the pharmacist. And finally, you dispense it to a patient who has a legitimate medical need. Every single link in that chain is tracked, recorded, and authorized.
And this is where it all comes down to you. The chain of custody, the whole journey, it ends right there at your pharmacy counter. And with that comes a huge amount of legal responsibility, resting squarely on your shoulders.
Now, here's a critical legal detail that you absolutely cannot afford to miss. Every single one of these dangerous drugs is also legally classified as a poison. So what does that mean for you? It means you aren't just following one set of rules. You have to follow the regulations for both dangerous drugs and poisons, which usually means even stricter requirements for things like labeling and storage. Think of these as your 4 golden rules, your 4 non-negotiables. Number 1, you get your drugs only from that official government source, period. 2, you only dispense them with a real, valid prescription. 3, your record keeping, especially that dangerous drug register, has to be perfect. And 4, the drugs themselves must be kept secure in a locked cupboard, all the time, no exceptions.
And let's be super clear, the stakes here are incredibly high. Making a mistake isn't a small slip-up. We're talking about the possibility of facing criminal charges, losing your license to practice pharmacy forever, and dealing with some very serious professional consequences. The integrity of this whole system really depends on you getting this right.
All right, let's talk about the final piece of this puzzle, the patient. How does the law decide if they're allowed to have these powerful medicines? This is where your job as the final gatekeeper really comes into focus.
The rule here is crystal clear. There's absolutely no gray area. For any regular person, having one of these drugs is legal if and only if they have a valid prescription from a registered doctor. That's it. Without that piece of paper, having something like codeine or morphine is a criminal offense. And you, the pharmacist, you are the person standing at that gate, checking that piece of paper.
Okay, so let's do a quick flyover of the whole system one more time. You've got one sole importer, the DGHS, one central distributor, the chief opium officer, you have authorized retailers, like pharmacists, who dispense only for medical needs, and you have the public, for whom having these drugs is only legal with a doctor's prescription. It's a completely top-down system built for maximum control and safety.
So I want to leave you with this question to think about. In a system like this, one that's built entirely on strict rules and your professional responsibility, what do you think your single most important job is? Is it the perfect record keeping? Is it being eagle-eyed about checking prescriptions? Or is it just making sure everything is locked up tight? It's something to really consider as you get ready to step into this incredibly important role.